So CDC may expand the time between first and second COVID shots. Here's why. Here's why. Is it because they watched the Jimmy Dore show? Because
Maybe.
Here we go. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is considering expanding the interval between the first 2 doses of the messenger RNA mRNA coronavirus vaccines. The first 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine are separated by 21 days. The first 2 shots of the Moderna vaccine are separated by 28 days. How did they come up with those numbers? Turns out they just made it up. That's what it looks like. Well, you tell me. Growing evidence, ready for this? Growing evidence suggests spacing out the doses further could boost the shot's efficacy against infection and hospitalization and reduce the risk of myocarditis. What? You mean you've been doing it in a way that increases the risk of myocarditis? Yes.
Don't be negative. It may reduce it, the previous risk.
Yeah, this is crazy. So when they say growing evidence suggests growing evidence, you mean evidence from a year ago? Did it grow, or are you just acknowledging it now? Because I have the study that's up at the CDC I'm going to show you. It's from last year. Okay. Soon, the CDC may push the 3 to 4 week intervals to 8 weeks. Okay. Though this new dosing interval could ultimately improve the shot's long-term effectiveness, it would also increase the time it would take for individuals to become fully vaccinated. Multiple regulatory centers are currently reviewing the available data to identify the safest and most effective vaccine schedule. Don't you think they would have already did that? Don't you think they would have already reviewed the data to identify the safest and most effective vaccination schedule before they approved the vaccination?
You know,
Kurt, doesn't that sound like something they should have already done? Go ahead, Kurt.
well, so I showed this article to somebody, and they said, well, they probably were worried people wouldn't get the second shot if it was longer. Do you know what I mean?
So they lied to them then.
Right. So it was like they weighed it and they said, well, it's better you just have 2 good hot doses of this and why would you say this now unless you were like, oh, some info's coming back and it looks like we might want to spread that out.
The original 3 to 4 week dosing schedule was followed in order to get enough data to get emergency use authorization. Let me say this again. The original 3 to 4 week dosing schedule was followed in order to get enough data to get emergency use authorization as quickly as possible. Oh, so it's not science, right, Kurt?
Oh, you got to read the last line of the article.
Okay, there wasn't anything. Oh, well, says this guy who's the infectious disease expert at the Johns Hopkins. He says there wasn't anything magic about the 3 to 4 week interval. Wasn't anything magic? I think you meant there wasn't anything scientific. Magic? What do you mean there wasn't anything magic? Where was the science behind? Oh, we had to do it like that so we could get the data fast enough so that we could get emergency use authorization. So you sped it up instead of doing it correctly. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing.
You know what I'm hearing? It is science because that's experimenting on people. That's what that is.
That's what that sounds like.
Data on them we'll just see how it works out. That's called an experiment, is it not?
So they didn't want their test to take twice as long. So the original 3 to 4 week dosing schedule, where'd they come up with that idea? It was followed in order to get enough data to get emergency use authorization as quickly as possible. So they didn't, sounds to me like they're not following best practices. They're following, how can we get this out as fast as possible and cut corners? That's what that sounds like to me, what they did. Now, I'm a pothead comedian. I'm not a virologist. I'm not a doctor. I know that surprises people. I don't give medical advice on this show. I do off the air all the time.
I guess we'll have to wait 75 years to see how it shakes out.
So, and Pfizer's not going to give us their data on their vaccine trials for 75 years. So I guess we'll find out when I'm about 150. It's known that spacing out doses longer increases the immunogenicity. That's quite an, isn't that a word? Is that quite a word? It's known. It's known. It's known. You mean it's always been known? Because that's how I read that. It's is it always been known, or is it known now? Go ahead, Kurt.
It shocked me when I heard the opposite of that for a while coming from them, because that's something I'd always heard about this. You have to space out.
Yes.
Jim Jeffries has a joke about getting his kid too many vaccinations at once. And he thought he turned his kid autistic, and then he found out, like, you're not supposed to get it, like, insane the same day. Or he has a bit he did about that. But that's the thing I've always, like, you can't get them too close together.
I have to reiterate the YouTube guidelines that vaccines do not cause autism. And we're not saying that. We're saying Jim Jeffries. We're saying Jim Jeffries has a joke about he worried that he did. He did. Boom.
The doctor's like, you can't get them this close together is the punchline of the joke. That's what was wrong. Not vaccine itself.
Right.
Getting them too close together.
Well, that's what
your immune system has to. Yeah.
That's what Rand Paul used to say. Now, again, I don't want to talk about it because I don't know. I can't confirm anything Kurt's saying about this. That comes from Jim Jeffries' joke. I can't confirm any of it. So just pretend I didn't say it because I'm not saying it. All right. So I love how they say it is known that spacing out doses longer increases the immunogenicity. It takes time for the immune system to mount and maintain a durable immune response. So it is known. That's the thing that sticks in my craw, Kurt. Really? That sounds like something you could have lost your YouTube channel for saying shit like that a year ago.
I know. It was forgotten for a year straight. I don't know if they know.
That sounds like the kind of thing I used to only be allowed to say on Rumble while interviewing a doctor who was banned on Twitter. It's a great world we're living in, isn't it? By separating the shots with more time, you allow the immune response mounted after the first shot to cool down. So your immune system's it's really overactive because you gave it a shot full of shit. That is an infection that seems like it's going to make it so it doesn't get overstimulated after the second dose and put someone at risk for myocarditis. So they're saying if you separate it, you don't put someone at risk for myocarditis. When did you guys figure this out?
People were saying this a year ago.
A year ago.
Yeah.
I know.
Crazy.
I know. I'm going to show you the study. Well, one of the studies, anyways. I'll show you one of them. I got at the CDC. Growing evidence suggests spacing out the doses further could boost the shot's efficacy against infection and hospitalization and reduce the risk of myocarditis. I thought Joe Rogan was wrong. Josh Zepps corrected him. I thought Josh Zepps corrected Joe Rogan and he was wrong. So do you see why we shouldn't be censoring anybody at any time about anything? Because the censors are often wrong. So, well, I guess the science has changed. You know, science always changing. That's why it's important not to question Anthony Fauci. He keeps busy by keeping up with all the change that's happening in science. Here's the study from the CDC, myocarditis analysis in the vaccine safety data link, rapid cycle analysis, and head-to-head product comparisons. And what's the date on this? October 21st. And here it is, myocarditis analysis, vaccine head-to-head. And here's all the doctors involved. And it's from Kaiser Permanente, Northern California. Kaiser Permanente Vaccine Study, Center Kaiser. And this is Marshfield Clinic Research Institute. It's at the CDC. It's at the Vaccine Study Center, Kaiser. And what do they say? Well, I'll read it to you. Among 18 to 39-year-olds, rates of myocarditis, pericarditis after Moderna were significantly higher than after Pfizer during both 0 to 21 and 0 to 7 day risk interviews. So I got the Moderna. They didn't tell me Moderna when I went and got it. Hey, you have a greater risk of myocarditis if you take this one and if you take Johnson & Johnson or if you take the Pfizer. They didn't tell you that. And there it is. I thought Josh Zepps corrected Joe Rogan. Remember, everybody said Josh Zapp's corrected Joe Rogan. What happened? This is from frickin' October of last year. Comparing Moderna and Pfizer of the 070, we estimated 13.3 excess cases of myocarditis, pericarditis per million doses. Among 18 to 39-year-olds, there were no clear clinical differences among the myocarditis, pericarditis between Moderna and Pfizer. Both mRNA vaccines were associated with increased risk of myocarditis and pericarditis for ages 18 to 39 years old, as was Pfizer for ages 12 to 17 years old. Head-to-head comparisons provide evidence that the risk of myocarditis, pericarditis was higher after Moderna than after Pfizer. So they've known this shit since October of last year. This is just one study. I'm sure there's plenty more. I saw Dr. John Campbell do a video a couple days ago, and his numbers were so alarming that I'm not even reporting those yet. Put it that way. Go to Dr. John Campbell's YouTube channel and look up his latest video on the myocarditis risk from the vaccines. It's eye-opening. It is eye-opening. So did I get this, more of this summary? No. Yeah, we got it. Everything's good. So there you go. So, hey, they finally figured this out. That turns out giving them the shots so close together was really sounds to me like it wasn't based on anything. Sounds to me it was based on
getting it passed. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get this authorized as quick as possible. So we don't want to have a group where we give it eight weeks apart, and then have a group where we give it 4 weeks apart, and then have a group where we give it 3. You know, they should have had different groups. Again, I'm not a scientist, but it seems pretty obvious that's how they should have did this. Because now they realize, oh, oopsie, we've been doing it wrong. We've been doing it in a way that increases heart inflammation. And you're going to mandate that. You want to mandate that. By the way, they got rid of the mandates for in the UK for the health workers. You know, it's all socialized, right? So the government runs the healthcare in the UK, the National Health Service, the NHS. They got rid of their vaccine mandates for healthcare workers. But Justin Trudeau still keeping them for truckers. You know how truckers infect everybody when they're sitting in their truck all day. This is not about your health. I'm telling you right now, what Justin Trudeau is doing is not about your health. What Joe Biden was trying to do, which they stopped in this country. They struck down his vaccine. You know, Joe Biden's vaccine mandates have been struck down for federal employees and for private companies. They've been struck down. But Justin Trudeau still turning the screws of fascism to truck drivers and farmers who are peacefully protesting in Canada, eh? Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Philadelphia on February 20th. We just added a second show. And February 26th, back here in Los Angeles, go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows.